Before I ever learned how to heal, I learned how to survive. Not intentionally, not consciously, but instinctively. Survival showed up as habits, as patterns, as reactions I thought were just who I am. But they weren't random. They were learned. They were the ways the little boy in me figured out how to stay safe. That's not who I am today, but it is how I learned to make it through. Welcome to the Scarred Sons podcast, where we dive into scars of life and the outcomes they shape. This podcast is a space for honest conversations about my journey, the lessons learned, the struggles endured, and the growth that followed, geared towards helping other sons with scars. We'll explore topics like personal development, mental and spiritual health, and the path to becoming the best version of yourself. Let's navigate these challenges together, one story at a time. Let's dive in. The views expressed on this podcast are based on my personal experiences and insights. I am not a licensed therapist, counselor, or medical professional, and the content shared is not intended as a substitute for professional advice or guidance. Please consult a qualified professional for advice tailored to your specific needs. I am not responsible for any decisions or outcomes resulting from the use of this content. What's up to all my Scarred Sons out there? I'm your host, Ty. Before we dive in, I want you to know this is a safe space. I'm not here as someone who has it all figured out. I'm just a man willing to speak his truth. And if you carry any scars, welcome home. Back in episode 9, The Little Boy and Me, I touched on some moments, some scenarios, some examples on when the boy showed up in my life. A lot of which I kind of just breezed over. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into some of those on this episode. Let's talk about it. This episode isn't about changing behavior. It's about understanding it. A lot of what shows up in my adult life started as protection in my childhood. Not because something was wrong with me, but because something required adaptation. Survival isn't weakness. It's intelligence under pressure. One of the first ways I learned to survive was silence. Saying less felt safer. Staying quiet meant less trouble. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because speaking didn't always feel safe. That silence didn't disappear as I got older. It followed me into relationships, into moments where my voice mattered. And I still found myself holding back. I can think on countless times and opportunities in different spaces and places where it was difficult for me to speak up. I mean, even in professional settings, being a part of visits from regionals or VPs and DMs and all these kind of different things. I was told, hey, why don't you share more of your ideas? Why don't you speak up more? Why don't you talk more? And it really was that little boy, that survival, trying to stay quiet so I don't ruffle any feathers, or trying to make sure I never said the wrong thing to make someone upset. I knew I had opposing thoughts in a lot of different scenarios, not just in my career, but mostly in my upbringing, my family life. See, I allowed my figures, I allowed my parents, friends, aunts, and uncles to speak up for me as a form of protection, but I never grew out of it. And so I found myself in a lot of different scenarios. I can speak specifically where I may want to say something, but I won't. And someone will step in for me, but I will never correct them whether their thought was right or wrong. I typically just let them say what they say, bail me out of jail, keep it moving. But one thing I learned from doing this is that it's harder to set boundaries later. People learn a version of you that they think they know because you never spoke up. They think they understand your thought process. They think they understand your actions and can place the person you are by the things that you do. But we don't give them much to go off of, and so they think it's true. But see, a lot of times, like right now, when I'm trying to create a boundary or start something that's really me, and it's crazy. but this is really me. But I've done the opposite for so long, it's puzzling to some. And so just like they always say, 30 days, it takes 30 days to build a habit. I believe that you have to stand behind your boundary in 30 different scenarios before you can really build that muscle. Before you can stop second guessing yourself, before you can stop going back and back and back. It's like you're reverting. It's like you almost get there. You almost like, man, I'm here. And boom, I go back to saying yes to something that I knew I didn't want to do. And so when I say 30 interactions or 30 ways to say no or whatever your boundaries are, they're not always the grand things. It's the small things that people catch on to. It's the small things that you think people aren't being observant to. Your patterns, your behaviors, your tone, the way your face clenches up when you're mad, or the way you can relax when people know that you're comfortable. Maybe you slouch down in your seat, or maybe you release yourself a little bit, let your head down. These are all signals to people so that they can understand who the real version of you are. I'm not going to get too deep on that one, but silence was a big part of my survival, big part of the little boy that kept showing up in me, and also a big challenge to step up to. Another way I survived was humor. If I could make people laugh, they wouldn't ask how I was really doing. Laughter gave me control of the room, and control felt like safety. Over time, humor stopped being connection. It became my cover. If I know off jump I'm going through something that I don't want you to know, or something I'm just trying to go through alone, or something I may need help with but don't want to ask, I will use humor as a mechanism to deflect off what those feelings can do to your personal physique, what they can do to your face structure. When you're stressed, when you're going through things, people can see it in your eyes, they can see it in your face, your muscles, they can see it in your posture. But if I lead with humor, if I come in the room and I get you joking, I get you laughing, you're going to automatically think I'm in a great mood. And if I can keep this up through the whole visit or through my whole time, my FaceTime with you, you'll never need to ask me a question about what I'm feeling inside. Because to you, I'm doing fine because I'm laughing. I'm doing fine because I'm making you laugh. We having a good time. So I don't give you the opportunity to be able to say, hey, you good? Everything all right? How are you doing? How is your mental? How is your day going? And I don't mean the one-time question. See, I got a brother in my life that he knows some of the answers before he asks me, which prompts him to ask me the question twice. And so you can get away with saying, I'm good, man. But he always hits me with that, now how you really doing? And man, that's a stinger. That's one that I struggle with sticking and moving around. Even if I try to include some humor, he knows. So that's one person I can't shake because we've grown together. We've been able to share stories together. It's a safe space. But a lot of other spaces out there in the world, you don't have that type of trust. And so you still default to the humor. It's easy. It's nice. I can get in, I can get out. You won't ask me too much, and I won't feel like I got to share and then fall into the hole of oversharing. Another thing I paired with humor, especially when I went home, was my attire. I took a lot of pride in my appearance. Things that really didn't matter, but it was another way to make you know that I was okay. If I could come home, got some nice rags on, new pair of kicks, clean car, there's no residuals. There's no residue of anything wrong. There's no reason to ask a question to someone that's showing up to you smiling, laughing, joking, smelling good, looking good, color coordinated, clean, nice edge up, and armor all on the tires. He got to be good. And he laughing. So these are all mechanisms I use to survive, just to get through the day, just to get through some stuff that I got buried deep inside. I also learned how to adjust myself to keep people close. Agreeing, overgiving, avoiding conflict. I didn't learn how to say no. I learned how to stay. As an adult, that looked like choosing peace over honesty and dealing with the resentment later. Man, there's so many times where I chose to do something. I chose to say yes to something. It was a complete inconvenience to me. And I said yes anyway. I did it. I was like, man, why did I do that? I get home, I'm like, why didn't I just say no? Why couldn't I just say, I got something to do? It sounds very easy, but it's very challenging to some of us. I think the first thing I thought about when I had to say no is covering myself. Always covering my steps. My mother told me a long time ago, if you tell one lie, you got to keep telling more to keep your story together. So I got good at it. I got so good that before I even was going to tell you no, I had to know the full story. I had to plan it out. All in my head. I didn't write nothing down. But if I knew I was going to tell you no, and if you wanted me to show up somewhere, I'm going to put together something realistic in my life and pair it up. Whether it was an inconvenience, whether it was a schedule conflict, or whether I had to just do something else differently. You wouldn't know because I was pairing it so well with my life that it all made sense. There was no reason for you to ask another question because the story was too bulletproof. But I learned that all I was doing with going through these things, having my story straight, or making sure I had a fresh pair of rags, armor oil on the tires, some good jokes, or just being silent. The real thing, this all boils down to just surviving. We don't really look at it that way, though. We look at it just trying to make it through the day, which is in a sense survival. But it's deeper than that. We're trying to protect you from our own problems when you're never really in control anyways. It's like, man, I don't want to burden this person. I don't want to bring this person down. Or I don't want to be a disappointment in this person's eyes that I care so much about. We don't even bring ourselves to having the conversation because it might not even go the way that we're thinking. You got some disappointing news. Some news that your parents have gotten from another sibling or an aunt or an uncle. But you heard this story before, and when it was told, this person you look up to was completely disappointed, and it almost felt like you would never gain their support again. But we're looking through the lens of a lot of different people's past experiences and placing those conclusions on how those story went on our own events that we're going through. I'm challenging myself now to get my own understanding of the answer. They say don't read a book by its cover. So I want to read some of the context to make sure I understand first. Before I place judgment on a situation. Before I bring fear into my life that's not even there. Before I generate a problem. Before the problem arises. Going through life with an open mind. Stepping out of the survival mode. But it's been difficult. Survival kept me safe though. But it also kept me guarded. What protected me as a boy started limiting me as a man. Not because it was wrong, but because it was never meant to last forever. A lot of what we call survival as men started as protection as boys. The question now isn't why we adapted, but whether we still need to live that way. If you recognize yourself in any of this, you're not weak. You just adapted early. Those patterns didn't ruin your life. They helped you make it through. And now, as an adult, you are allowed to pause. You are allowed to update some old strategies. You don't abandon the boy. You acknowledge him and you decide what leads next. And I know some of these things are going to sound familiar because we've talked about them in these previous episodes, but I must repeat them because of how important they are. And I know where you are. If any of this resonates with you, these are extremely important. Pause. Give yourself grace. Once you've given yourself grace, Update your operating system just like you do on your cell phone. And don't abandon any past part of you. But you want to accept that, become aware of that, so that you can make a better decision for yourself in the future. Peace and love, y'all. Thank you for joining me on the Scarred Sons podcast. Remember, every scar tells a story, and every story has the power to inspire growth. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to reach out and share your journey. Don't forget to stay up to date with the podcast by liking, commenting, and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at scarred.sons for more content and updates. Until next time, keep moving forward, keep healing, and remember, scars don't define you, they shape you. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.